9 minutes. That is how long it took. 9 minutes from the moment the White House announcement hit the wire to the moment Mark Carney walked to a podium, looked directly into the cameras, and said the four words that are now being replayed in every defense ministry, every finance capital, and every foreign affairs office on the planet. 9 minutes. Most leaders take 9 hours, some take 9 days, some never respond at all. They absorb the hit, call their ambassador, draft a strongly worded statement through 3 layers of communication staff, and hope the news cycle moves on before they have to say anything that cost them anything. Carney responded in 9 minutes. And what he said in those 9 minutes just changed the calculation for every world leader watching to see whether standing up to this White House was survivable. Stay with me, because this is not a story about a trade dispute. This is a story about power. Who has it? Who thinks they have it? And what happens when those two things are no longer the same? Before I show you exactly what happened and exactly what Carney said, I want you to think about something. When a bully punches someone in front of a crowd, and that person immediately, calmly, precisely punches back, not with rage, not with tears, but with cold, surgical accuracy, what happens to every other person in that crowd who has been afraid of that bully? They stop being afraid. That is not a small thing. That is how power shifts, not through armies. Through the moment, everyone watching decides the bully is not invincible. Hit, subscribe, and turn on notifications right now, because what is unfolding between Washington and Ottawa is moving faster than any outlet can track. And when the next piece drops, the submarine decision, the F-35 review, the LG pivot, you need to be here with the full picture, not catching up here first. Now, let me tell you what actually happened. The White House announcement came without warning. No diplomatic back-channel notice, no courtesy call to the Canadian embassy, no quiet heads-up to give Ottawa time to prepare a coordinated response. The deal was frozen, the statement was released, and Washington sat back and waited for the reaction they expected. Confusion, scrambling, a hastily arranged press conference where a rattled prime minister tried to look calm while clearly not being calm. That is the playbook. You hit fast, you hit without warning, and you watch the other side react, because reaction is weakness. Reaction means you are playing their game on their timeline. Carney did not react. He responded in 9 minutes with a statement so precise, so structured, and so strategically loaded that political analysts in 3 countries spent the next 24 hours pulling it apart line by line, trying to understand how a response of that quality gets produced in 9 minutes. The answer is that it does not get produced in 9 minutes. It gets prepared over weeks. It sits in a folder, and the moment the trigger event happens, the folder opens. That is not a politician at a podium. That is a central banker who has spent 30 years managing crises, which means 30 years of building contingency frameworks for scenarios you hope never happen, but prepare for anyway. When Carney was governor of the Bank of England, he managed responses to market shocks that moved in milliseconds. 9 minutes is an eternity in the world he came from. Washington hit. Carney's folder opened, and the 4 words he delivered to the cameras, words I'm going to give you in exactly the right context so you understand their full weight, landed like a closed door. Calm, permanent, finished. He said, Canada will not beg. 3 words after the first one, 4 total. And if you think that is simple, you do not understand how much meaning a central banker can pack into 4 words when he has had weeks to choose them. He did not say Canada is angry. He did not say Canada is disappointed. He did not say Canada calls on the United States to reconsider. He did not perform outrage for the cameras. He said Canada will not beg. Past tense in the future. It is already decided. It is not a position he is taking, it is a fact he is stating. The discussion about whether Canada will negotiate from weakness is over. It ended the moment he said it. Now let me show you why those 4 words hit Washington harder than any tariff Canada could have announced in response. Because the entire leverage structure of how this White House negotiates is built on one thing: the assumption that the other side needs this deal more than they do, that if you make the other side uncomfortable enough, uncertain enough, economically squeezed enough, they will come to you. They will ask, they will beg. And the moment they beg, you have won. Not the negotiation, the psychology. You have established who is stronger. And from that point forward, every future negotiation starts with that psychological imbalance already in place. Carney just burned that architecture to the ground in 4 words. Canada will not beg, which means the leverage doesn't work, which means the playbook doesn't apply, which means Washington is now in a negotiation where their primary tool, psychological dominance through economic pressure, has been publicly, calmly, permanently neutralized. And he did it in 9 minutes before Washington had finished reading their own press release. Let me give you the receipts. Because Carney's 9-minute response was not just 4 words. It was a package, a structured, sequenced, strategically layered package that announced exactly what Canada's next moves would be before Washington had time to prepare a counter. Receipt 1, the Economic Declaration. Carney made clear immediately that Canada was accelerating its economic diversification, not threatening to, not warning that it might, announcing that it was. Discussions with European trade partners already in advanced stages since the Munich Security Conference. LG supply discussions with Asian buyers already in progress. The Trans Mountain pipeline to Pacific Tidewater already operational and already being positioned for expanded capacity agreements with non-American buyers. These are not future contingencies. They are present actions that were already underway. And Carney's 9-minute response told the world that the frozen deal had not created these actions. It had accelerated them. That is a devastating message to send, because it means the punishment did not work. You froze the deal to hurt Canada. Canada responded by moving faster toward the exits you were trying to close. Receipt 2, the alliance signal. Within the 9-minute response, Carney referenced Canada's new defence and economic partnerships. Munich, the SAFE programme, the Eurogay, group dinner. Not as threats, not as leverage, but as facts, as accomplished realities that exist regardless of what Washington decides next. The subtext was precise and unmistakable. Canada no longer has one strategic partner. Canada has built a network, and you do not disrupt a network by cutting one node. Every European capital heard that subtext. Every Asian trade partner heard it. Every defense ministry that has been watching this confrontation heard it. The message was not directed at Washington. It was directed at everyone watching Washington. And it said, Canada is not isolated. Canada is a node in something larger than this bilateral relationship, and that something is growing. Receipt 3, the economic mirror. Carr's response included specific numbers, and this is the part that made financial analysts go quiet. He did not talk about what the frozen deal would cost Canada. He talked about what it would cost the United States specifically by sector, by state, by time frame. The border states that depend on Canadian energy supply, the auto manufacturers in Michigan and Ohio, whose supply chains run through Ontario, the agricultural processors in Minnesota and North Dakota, who move product across the border in both directions. The defense contractors who are now watching Canadian submarine and fighter jet contracts go to competitive international bidding, because the relationship has degraded to a point where Canada cannot assume American political stability. He did not threaten these outcomes. He described them as a central banker describes consequences, clinically, precisely, with numbers, without emotion. And clinical description of consequences delivered without anger is the most terrifying thing you can say to a government that has been relying on the other side being too afraid to say it. Now, let me tell you what the 9-minute response means beyond this specific moment, because the implications run deeper than one frozen deal and one immediate counter. What Carney proved in 9 minutes is that this White House's primary weapon, surprise, no longer works against Canada. The surprise attack is the core of the negotiating strategy. You move without warning, you create chaos, and you exploit the chaos. But if the target has already mapped every possible attack, prepared a response to each one, and can deploy that response in 9 minutes, the surprise is gone. You are not creating chaos. You are triggering a pre-built counter. And the pre-built counter is always better than the improvised attack because it had more time in development. Carney has been building these contingencies since before he took office. Every escalation from Washington has been a trigger event for a prepared response. The tariffs on steel triggered the European outreach. The NATO credibility questions triggered the safe program engagement. The insults at Davos triggered the Munich strategy, and the frozen deal triggered the 9-minute response. Each trigger, each response has deepened the alternative architecture. Every time Washington attacks, Ottawa gets stronger. Not through retaliation, through acceleration. There is a term in systems design called anti-fragility. It describes a system that does not just survive shocks, it gets stronger because of them. What Carney has built around Canada's strategic position is anti-fragile. The more pressure Washington applies, the faster the European and Asian partnerships develop, the more attractive Canada becomes as a stable alternative partner. The more leverage Canada accumulates in negotiations with non-American buyers. Washington's attacks are Carney's growth engine. This is what it looks like when a central banker runs a country's foreign policy. Now let me give you the 3 scenarios playing out in real time. Because this is not over. The 9-minute response was a move, not a conclusion. And the next moves are already being made. Scenario 1. Washington backs down quietly. This is the most likely outcome in the near term, and it will not look like backing down. It will be announced as a new framework, a productive dialogue, a mutual decision to return to the table with fresh parameters. The language will be designed so both sides can claim they did not blink. But the substance will be a capitulation because the frozen deal will be unfrozen and the terms that produce the freeze will be quietly abandoned. This happens not because of Carney's forwards. It happens because of the sectors those forwards activated. Defence contractors watching their Canadian contracts go to European competitors. Energy companies watching LG deals close with Asian buyers. Border, state governors watching supply chains quietly restructure away from their economies. Corporate America does not care about who wins the political argument. Corporate America cares about where the contracts go. And right now, the contracts are going somewhere else. Scenario 2, the escalation spiral. Washington does not back down. It escalates. More measures, more economic pressure, more public framing of Canada as a problematic partner. And Carney accelerates the pivot. The F-35 review concludes in favor of the European alternative. The submarine contract goes to the German or Korean bidder. The LNG agreements with Asia get signed with 20-year terms. These are not threats anymore. They are outcomes that follow logically and quickly from the decision to hold the current position. And the damage they do to the American defense and energy sectors is not recoverable on a political timeline. Once a submarine contract is signed with a foreign shipbuilder, American shipbuilders do not get that work back in 4 years or 8. Years. The industrial relationships built around that contract take decades to replace. Washington would be trading short-term political positioning for long-term structural economic damage. And Carney knows the math on that trade better than anyone in the room. Scenario 3. The model becomes contagious. This is the scenario that nobody in Washington is adequately prepared for. Carney's 9-minute response gets studied, not by journalists, by governments. Every foreign minister and prime minister and finance minister who's been sitting across from this White House absorbing pressure and wondering whether there is another way to respond. And when they watch a former central banker from a country with 40 million people deliver a prepared, precise 9-minute response that neutralizes a surprise attack and immediately shifts the leverage. Some of them start asking their own teams, why don't we have a folder? Why don't we have contingencies already mapped? Why are we still improvising when Ottawa is executing? Australia is watching. The United Kingdom is watching. Japan and South Korea are watching. And Carney's March parliamentary address in CRA is not a diplomatic courtesy call. It is a tutorial. The bully playbook fails the moment the targets stop being afraid and start being prepared. Carney is making them prepared, one 9-minute response at a time. Let me tell you what this means for you specifically, not geopolitically, practically. If you live in a border state, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Minnesota, New York, the supply chain restructuring that is quietly accelerating right now is not abstract. It is the auto plant in your county that runs on Canadian parts. It is the energy infrastructure that heats your home through a Canadian pipeline. It is the agricultural trade that moves across the border in both directions and supports the processing jobs in your town. These relationships were built over 30 years of integrated economic development. They are being stress tested right now, and the stress test has a timer on it. Because every month that the hostility continues, the alternative routes get more established, the alternative contracts get signed, and the economic activity that used to flow through your state finds a different path. If you work in defense manufacturing, the Canadian submarine and fighter jet review is not a foreign policy story. It is a procurement story. Billions of dollars in contracts that American workers were planning around are in competitive international bidding right now. Canada's decision will not be made on political loyalty. It will be made on capability, price, and the long-term reliability of the supplier relationship, which means it will be made on the same math that Carney applies to everything. The hard truth that Washington has not absorbed, the truth that the 9-minute response was designed to communicate, is this. Canada is not punishable on the timeline that political cycles operate on. You can freeze a deal today, but the consequences of that freeze compound over months and years in ways that no single re-election cycle can address. Carney is not thinking about the next election. He is thinking about the next decade of Canadian strategic positioning. And those two time horizons produce completely different decisions. Trump is playing checkers on a 4-year board. Carney is playing chess on a 30-year board. And the 30-year board always wins. 9 minutes. That is all it took to make that clear to every government watching. Here is what I want to know from you. 2 questions. Pick one and put your answer in the comments right now, because I am reading every single response on this video, and the comment section here is going to be more honest than anything you will read in the analysis pieces tomorrow morning. Question 1. Was Carney's 9-minute response the moment this confrontation permanently shifted, or is this just another round in a fight that resets every few weeks? Question 2. If you were advising the White House right now, what do you tell them? Back down quietly and call it a win. Hold the line and absorb the economic damage, or escalate and find out exactly how prepared Carney's folder really is. Drop it below. Real answers, no slogans. And share this video with one person who needs to understand what is actually happening between these two countries. Not the tariff headlines, not the Insul headlines, the structural shift, the architecture being built while the media covers the noise. One person in your network who is connected to border state manufacturing, to energy, to defense. They need to see this. Subscribe notification bell because the submarine decision is coming. F-35 review is coming. The LG pivot to Asia is coming. And when those land, you need the full picture already in your head. 9 minutes change the calculation. The next 9 minutes are being prepared right now.